Okay, guys, this is why I love A&P class. I'm fascinated. So right now we're studying about the lymphatic system, and I'll be honest, here's what I knew about the lymphatic system before this class. We have lymph nodes, and they get swollen when you're sick, and some of them are here, and I knew some of them were in our groin and our armpit. That's all I knew about them. That's like literally all I knew about them. I tell you that to say I'm not an expert on lymph, and I'm talking about stuff that I know very little about, but what little I learned, I just learned, and it made all these different things click, and it's kind of exciting. So I thought I would share with you how the last couple days of A&P have helped me understand COVID and our immunity to it and the vaccines. So yeah, I'm just gonna share what I know. I'm gonna try really hard not to make this political, which I know is like next to impossible, but you can draw your own inferences from what this information means. I'm gonna put some links below to some articles I read, because as soon as I started listening to the teacher, I was like, like things were just like, how does this relate to what I've heard? How does this relate to what I've heard? And I read 3 articles. All 3 were fascinating to me, so I'm gonna link them below. So first, very, very basic, what I've learned about the lymph system. It has a lot of the cells that help fight sickness. So it helps with our immune system. Now, they were talking about T cells and B cells make these antibodies that will fight certain pathogens. Maybe, I think pathogens is the right word, certain sicknesses. So different cells are good at making different antibodies, but when they make the antibody, they can remember, I think it was called memory cells. Okay, our B cells are made in our bone marrow, and they have a glycoprotein receptor. The receptors will bind with an antigen and help destroy whatever, that antigen is on. So B cells become activated when they bind with that antigen and then divide. Like once it becomes activated, it divides, so it makes more and more of these B cells of itself that can bind to that antigen so that your body can kill that virus with the B cells. There might be other stuff involved too, but that's one of the things that happens. And our bodies have different types of B cells. So in some of these activated B cells become memory cells. Memory cells will continue to produce a small amount of that antibody even after the infection's over. So that's why when you get sick, your body makes the B cells that fight that particular pathogen, and then your body has memory B cells that will keep making the antibodies so that if you get sick with that sickness again, your body's got like a head start. It already knows what to do. So memory B cells help us fight sicknesses that we've gone through before. That is why, so Raylan got COVID back in July. It wasn't an easy thing. Usually kids have a pretty mild case, and I think she probably did have a pretty mild case. The first 24 hours of symptoms for her were exhausting, a little scary. It got a little scary. We didn't go to the hospital, but we were really, really close to going to the ER with her. But then once we got through that first night, doing almost all the things the hospital could have done, we have the stuff here. We don't have all of it, but we have a lot of it. So, we're doing albuterol and cough assist and shaker vest and nasal cannula oxygen, and those are the main 4 things we did, and that got her over the hump. And then we just kept doing that for, I think it was about 10 days that she had symptoms that we dealt with, but it got better after the first 24 hours. So we were nervous about her getting COVID because she does already have respiratory problems. We already have all that stuff in our house because a mild cold can cause her to need that stuff. So COVID was a little worse for her than a mild cold. Didn't put her in the hospital. If we didn't have those things at home, it for sure would have put her in the hospital. Within 24 hours of her symptoms, she would have been in the hospital if we didn't have those things at home, especially the PRN oxygen. And we could monitor with the pulse ox. So anyway, once she was out of the woods with that, Chris and I were just like, because she wasn't allowed to get vaccinated. She's 9 years old. She can now. But when she got COVID, that was before the vaccine was approved for her age group. So we didn't have a way to give her any immunity. We knew once she got COVID and got over it, her body was going to have natural immunity. I didn't know it was these memory B cells that were giving her natural immunity, but I knew she had natural immunity. And I hear people when they're trying to argue for or against the vaccine talking about,
if you've already had COVID, why do you need to get the vaccine? What's better for your immunity, the vaccine, or if you've gotten over COVID, before you get the COVID vaccine, you should check what your antibodies are.
Maybe you've heard all this stuff, and I heard one person say, I'm just saying what they said. I'm not saying my opinion on the vaccine in this video. Maybe I will another time, but I mean, I kind of hinted at it. We couldn't get Raylan the vaccine. We would have. Anyways, this one man said,
if you've had COVID and you've gotten over it, doctors can use your blood or your plasma to help sick people. Like, you can give them your antibodies
or something.
But if you've got COVID and then gotten over it and then got vaccinated, they couldn't use your antibodies.
And I don't even know if that's for sure true or not. I think it is. I think I looked it up and it was true, but it was basically like your antibodies weren't as good after you got the vaccine or something. And I was curious about that more. I didn't look into it a lot, but learning how this all works, I was like, okay, so does the vaccine make these B memory cells like it does if you actually get COVID? Like, how does the vaccine work? Suddenly I wanted to know, how does this mRNA vaccine work? Which I know it's different than other vaccines because it's an mRNA vaccine, but I really didn't know what that meant. So I looked some of this stuff up. First, I looked up natural infection versus vaccination. Differences in COVID antibody responses emerge. I'm reading off the site. It's not literally what I looked up. I forget what I typed, but this is the article that came up from the Rockefeller University, and it is from August 24th, 2021. So it's recent. And basically, it started talking about, here's the first sentence of the article, and it was like, yay, I love A&P class. Hope for a future without fear of COVID-19 comes down to circulating antibodies and memory B cells. I'm like, I know what both those things mean because I just learned it in A&P. And then it said, unlike circulating antibodies, which peak soon after vaccination or infection, only to fade a few months later, memory B cells can stick around to prevent severe disease for decades. I was like, okay, so what does the vaccine help? Because I was pretty sure getting COVID makes you get those memory B cells. And it's true. Like, getting COVID will give you memory B cells. Vaccination will give you more circulating antibodies than natural infection. Natural infection, it sounds like, will give you more or better quality B cells. So both are ways to fight COVID, both the antibodies that are circulating in your blood and these memory B cells that remember how to make the antibodies. So overall, if you've got COVID and you've gotten over it, you have better immunity than someone who's just been vaccinated because your body will make better, stronger memory B cells. Getting COVID and getting over it, your body has better working memory B cells. And not all memory B cells are equal. Some work better than others, I guess. The vaccine will give you more antibodies just circulating in your blood, but just like you need a booster to get more of those antibodies, they go away quicker. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I got vaccinated. I chose to get vaccinated, honestly, not for myself as much as for Raylan. I felt like I did not want to give her COVID, and I won't say I wasn't worried at all about myself getting COVID, but I knew the chances of me having major issues with it were incredibly small, but the chances of my daughter having issues with it were much greater. So I got vaccinated to prevent her from getting COVID, hopefully. I actually did end up getting COVID. So I have immunity from the vaccine, and I have immunity from pretty sure I got the Delta variant just based on when it came out. Wasn't a bad case of it. I'd like to think that probably the vaccine gave me a boost in fighting it, so I didn't have as bad a case of COVID. It was just like a cold for me. And actually, I caught COVID from Raylan because I hug on her and get in her face, and even while she was sick, I was doing that. So I got COVID from Raylan. I feel like I'm like super duper immune because of it. Okay, so that was the first article. I'm gonna link that because it was interesting, and it just explains why getting sick with COVID gives you immunity, why the vaccine gives you the immunity, how they're different and yet also very similar. So then I'm like, okay, so how does the vaccine give you immunity? Like, most vaccines are some form of the virus is put in you, and then your body learns how to make antibodies for that virus. What is the mRNA vaccine? So the next thing I looked up was understanding the mRNA COVID vaccines. This is from the CDC, and mRNA, I did know what this stood for. I know it stood for messenger RNA. I did learn about that in AMP, and messenger RNA like helps read the instructions of your DNA or something. Well, in the vaccine, you're given a whole lot of mRNA that goes into your muscle cells. It doesn't go into your DNA. It goes into your muscle cells though, just like mRNA that is, I feel like, I could be wrong here. I feel like your mRNA, it's directly related to the DNA you have, I think. So this mRNA is not. This is like foreign mRNA that goes into your cells, but your cells will read it just like your DNA, your mRNA that your body makes. And this mRNA tells your muscle cells how to make the antibody for the COVID antigen, the little thing that sticks out on the COVID cell. You know, the little things that stick out on the COVID cell, and then the B cells, antibodies attached to it, and then that's how they kill it. So this mRNA goes into your muscle cells and tells it how to make these antibodies. So your muscles make tons and tons of antibodies against COVID. More than if you get the natural infection, is the way I understand. But then this mRNA does not permanently change your body. Eventually your body this is foreign mRNA, and your body listens to it, makes these antibodies, and then your body flushes this mRNA out. You don't have it anymore. It's not in your system. I'm going to read this from the CDC. First, COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are given in the upper arm muscle. The mRNA will enter the muscle cells and instruct cells' machinery to produce a harmless piece of what is called the spike protein. Okay, look at the COVID virus. Look at a picture of the COVID virus. You see the little things that come off of it? The mRNA that's in the vaccine tells your muscles to make those little things, not the virus. It tells your muscles to make those little proteins that are coming off of it. So your muscles make those proteins, and then your own B cells attack those proteins, just like they would attack the virus. And that's how your B cells, if you get the vaccine, learn how to make antibodies. So our B cells recognize that protein that your own muscle cells made is not a good thing. It's essentially the little thing that sticks off the virus, but you don't have the virus. Your muscle cells can't make the virus. So your B cells learn how to protect your body against that protein. So then if the virus comes in with that protein attached, your B cells remember. That's why the vaccine cannot give you COVID. There are some vaccines that can actually give you the disease you're getting vaccinated. It's very rare because now they're usually dead vaccines. But the polio vaccine, the first polio vaccine that came out was a live vaccine. That meant it injected live polio virus into people. That's not the current polio vaccine. You cannot get polio from the current polio vaccine. But the one that my parents got, it was the live virus. So technically, since you were injecting the live virus into you, you could get polio from the polio vaccine. It was very unlikely, and it was much more likely you were going to get polio and die than from catching it without being vaccinated. So that's why people took that risk. The mRNA COVID vaccine, you're not putting any COVID in your body. You're putting directions into your muscle cells that make your muscle cells make the little things that come off the COVID virus, and then your body gets to practice fighting those little things that are on the COVID virus, so that if the COVID virus does come in, your body knows how to fight it. mRNA, it never enters the nucleus of your cell. It never, has contact with your own DNA, so it doesn't change or influence your genes. And then our body breaks down this mRNA and gets rid of it. The mRNA that's injected into you does not stay in you. And the spike proteins that your body makes, because of this mRNA vaccine, they don't stay in you either. Like, once that mRNA is out of your body, it's going to stop making the spike. Your body's going to stop making those spike proteins, the little bloop, bloop, bloop things. And then you're no longer fighting those spike proteins. But hopefully you have those B memory cells that remember how in case COVID comes in you. I understand how the mRNA vaccine works. I also understand it's newish, and there might still be more stuff we need to know about how it works. I'm not saying that it's like, I'm just literally saying what we know about how it works. There's probably a lot we don't know about how it works still. But that's how they work. And now I get it. I get how they work. But our body makes better memory B cells by fighting the actual virus in the vaccine. And so the next article I looked up was study of antibody producing B cells from patients who recovered from COVID-19 reveals a new cross-reactive antibody, what makes some B cells more effective at neutralizing the virus. And I think it also talked more about why natural immunity might be better than the vaccine, but how studying people's natural immunity can lead to us maybe making better vaccines. I don't know how Chris is going to edit all this, but it was just fascinating. It just made the lymphatic system section of AMP so much more interesting. And it also made the COVID vaccine, to me, appear less scary. Now that I understand what it's doing somewhat, to me, the COVID vaccine looks less risky. I didn't really think about how it worked before. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't look it up. I didn't read how the vaccine worked. I just knew it was a different type of vaccine. Now I understand what it does, and it's really cool. It's really cool what it does. Yeah, I'm gonna turn this around. Can you see? Oh, you can't see on the TV. See, these are the spike proteins on something. So the mRNA vaccine tells your muscle cells to make not the big blue ball, just these spike proteins. And then your B cells see these spike proteins floating around, not the big blue ball. They just see these spike proteins floating around if you got the vaccine. And they attack them, and then they remember how to attack them. If you get COVID, the whole COVID virus is in your system, and your B cells attack the whole virus and remember how. So I got super duper immunity. I wondered if did the vaccine somehow cancel out your natural immunity? It doesn't look like it does. So I'm still not quite sure why that one guy said
you can't donate your antibodies if you've been vaccinated.
I don't know. Maybe I'll look it up. I just know I read my AMP, and now I understand how the mRNA vaccine works. It's really cool how it works. And Raylan has natural immunity because she got COVID. We do still want to get her vaccinated. We wanted to get her vaccinated before she got COVID because we felt like it was definitely worth the risk, even not understanding how the vaccine worked. I read enough statistics to know I felt it was worth the risk for her to get vaccinated, but we couldn't. The FDA wouldn't let us choose to take risks to get her vaccinated until they'd done enough studies. Now that she can get vaccinated, I'm like, well, you have natural immunity. I'm not in quite as big a hurry. I want her to be off all of her pain meds from surgery and be feeling like herself. So we can tell if she's having a reaction to the vaccine. And also, I don't know if there's any truth in this, but I feel like your body will respond better to a vaccine and get better immunity if you're not taking anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen right after you get vaccinated. I don't know if there's truth in that. For some reason, I have that in my head, that the vaccine won't work as good if you need to take ibuprofen afterwards. If someone knows if that's true or not, and you want to link an article below, boom. But because Raylan has some natural immunity, we're holding off on giving her the vaccine until she's recovered from her hip surgery. We're not extremely concerned about her getting COVID again. Even if she were to get it again, her body remembers, somewhat how to fight it. She would get a much less severe case. Now, immunity wanes. We do still want to get her vaccinated. We're not in as big of a hurry because she has some natural immunity already. That's why I know this is a long blabber, but if you wanted to know a little bit about how the mRNA vaccine works, learn about the lymphatic system, learn about B cells, and then, read some of these articles, especially the CDC one. It does a great job of explaining what the mRNA vaccine does, how it works at a level that I feel like those of us with some limited understanding of our anatomy and cellular level can understand. And I have a feeling the more you understand already, the more this article gives you some really interesting information. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. So I encourage you, especially the CDC article and the Rockefeller University article. Like I said, the Rockefeller University article is basically telling you why, if you got COVID and got over it, you probably have better immunity than someone who was just vaccinated. And then the CDC article explains what is an mRNA vaccine, what is it doing, what is it not doing. It's not the mRNA that was injected into me when I got vaccinated is no longer in me. And my body is no longer making those little blue, blue, blue things. You know, I got that vaccine so long ago. My body's no longer making those things from the vaccine. But I may have B cells that still remember how to fight the little blue, blue, blue things that the vaccine caused my muscles to make. So, hope you enjoyed my lesson on the lymph system and COVID mRNA vaccine and how our body fights COVID, because I'm fascinated. Just brought class to real practical life.